You know, sometimes a book title just grabs you. And that's kind of how I felt about the Let Them theory by Mel Robbins. And it seems like a lot of you are intrigued too, which is why you've been requesting a deep dive into it.
Yeah, it's definitely been a popular one.
Now, Mel's known for her straight-talking motivational advice, but this isn't just another self-help pep talk. She's really grounded this theory in solid research and even some ancient philosophies.
It's fascinating how she takes this ancient concept of letting go, something you see in Stoicism and Buddhism, and makes it so incredibly relevant to modern life.
Right, and for our listeners who haven't encountered those traditions, we're not talking about passive acceptance here. It's more like a strategic approach to empower yourself.
Exactly.
Because who hasn't felt powerless at some point in their life?
Oh, yeah. I mean, all the time.
Mel starts the book with this story about her son's prom that I think really sets the stage. And you wouldn't think prom night would be a breeding ground for these profound insights.
You wouldn't.
So set the scene for us.
So she describes her daughter's proms as, meticulously planned. Every detail was like agonized over.
Well, the dresses, the dates, the dinners.
For his whole thing. But when it came to her son Oakley's prom, it was total chaos.
Oh, no.
No dinner reservations. Yeah. A sudden downpour. Kids showing up in tuxes with sneakers.
Oh, that classic teenage nonchalance. I bet the parents weren't quite as chill.
Especially Mel. She's scrambling to find a restaurant for like 20 teenagers in formal wear, while Oakley and his friends are just like, tacos sound good.
Oh, I can only imagine.
And this anecdote just brilliantly illustrates how deeply ingrained our need for control is, especially as parents.
Oh, I can so relate to that. Trying to orchestrate the perfect event, only to realize, wait a minute, I can't control everything.
Exactly.
So that's where I think the seed of let them is planted.
Yeah.
It's in that moment where she realizes she can't control the rain, she can't control teenagers, but she can control her reaction to it. So that's the first part of let them, accepting that you can't control other people. But I feel like there's another side to it, isn't there?
Absolutely. Mill calls it let me. It's about shifting your focus to what you can control, your choices, your responses, your personal growth.
Okay, so there's this balance between let them and let me.
Yes.
She uses a really clever analogy in the book, a seesaw.
Yes, I love the seesaw analogy.
I'm a visual person, so tell me about the seesaw.
Okay, so imagine yourself on one end of the seesaw, trying to force the other person to do what you want. You're stuck on that low end, feeling powerless.
Mm-hmm.
But when you let them be, you're pushing off the ground, you rise up as they go down.
Okay.
The power shifts back to you.
I love that visual. Because I think so many of us get stuck on that low end of the seesaw, trying to control things we simply can't.
All the time.
And we give away so much power to those little daily annoyances,
Yes.
The rude cashier, traffic jams, the coworker who knows exactly how to push your buttons.
Yeah.
Those are all things we can't really change. Yet they can drain us. That's where I think this theory gets really interesting, because it's not just about accepting major life events. It's about handling those small daily stressors that can feel so overwhelming.
It's like a stress detox.
Yes.
Mel talks about being on a plane with this guy who's just coughing nonstop.
Oh, I hate that.
And instead of letting it stress her out, she uses let them.
So I'm picturing her like stuffing tissues in his mouth, but I'm guessing that wasn't the solution.
No.
What did she do?
She took a different approach. She draws on advice from Dr. Aditi Narurkar.
Okay.
She's a stress expert who emphasizes the power of deep breathing.
Oh, deep breaths.
Yeah, deep breaths can literally reset your nervous system.
Let them cough. Let me chill out with some deep breaths.
Exactly.
I like it.
You're taking back control of your own mental and physical state.
And it's interesting because there's actually some science to back that up, right?
There is. It aligns with research on the vagus nerve, which is crucial for regulating stress. Deep breathing stimulates the vagus nerve, which calms you down.
That's so helpful, because it's so easy to feel like those little things are controlling us. But we do have the power to choose our response.
We do.
Okay, so we've talked about daily annoyances, but what about bigger issues?
Yeah.
Like those frustrating career situations, feeling stuck, being passed over for a promotion.
Oh, that's a tough one.
Because that feeling of powerlessness is so common in those moments, isn't it?
It is.
And it's so tempting to try and force things.
Right.
Like if you feel like you deserve that promotion, but your boss isn't budging, You just want to have that make or break conversation, list all your achievements.
Yeah.
But that so rarely works. It can even backfire because you end up seeming demanding or worse, desperate. You're still trying to control their decision.
Right.
Which you can't do.
You can't.
So how does let them apply here?
Well, it's about detaching from that immediate frustration and focusing on what you can control.
So you're saying let them string me along?
In a way, yes.
Really?
It's more about shifting your energy.
Okay.
Update your resume, network, explore other opportunities where your skills are valued.
So it's not about giving up.
Wrong.
It's about taking charge of your career path.
Exactly.
That makes a lot of sense. It's not about passively accepting a bad situation. It's about strategically channeling that energy into positive action.
I like how you put that.
So it's almost like let them think they're in control
Yes.
while you're secretly working behind the scenes to create a better situation for yourself.
Exactly. And remember, if you stay in that job, you are letting your boss control your future. But by taking those steps to explore other options, you become the one in the driver's seat.
That's a good point. Now, I think it's important to point out that let them isn't always about stepping back and accepting things.
Right.
There are times when action is necessary.
Absolutely.
I'm curious about that. When does let them not apply?
Okay, well, Mel tells this story about walking her dogs in the park, and the ranger warns her about off-leash dogs and people not picking up after them.
Let me guess. She immediately encounters someone breaking the rules.
Of course.
That always happens.
At first, she uses let them. You know, it's not worth getting worked up over.
Right.
But then it escalates. The dog does its business and the owner just walks away.
Oh, that is so infuriating. I can see why let them might reach its limit in a situation like that.
Exactly.
So sometimes speaking up or taking action is the right thing to do.
It is.
So how do you know when to let them and when to take action?
Mel suggests asking yourself, will this matter in an hour, a week, a year?
Okay, so if it's something you'll still be fuming about next week, it might be worth addressing.
Exactly.
It's about choosing your battles wisely
Right.
and knowing when your energy is best spent taking action.
Yes.
Now, I think things get even trickier when family is involved.
Oh, absolutely.
Their opinions can feel so personal
They do.
because family knows all our buttons.
They do.
And their judgments can sting in a way no one else's can.
They really can.
So how does let them apply to those often complicated family dynamics?
Well, Mel uses this concept of family systems,
Okay.
basically meaning that our families are interconnected, like a mobile. When one part moves, the whole thing shifts.
Right.
So when one person changes, it creates ripples throughout the family, leading to all sorts of reactions.
Like that butterfly effect thing?
Exactly.
One small change can have huge consequences.
It can.
And this is especially true in step families, right?
Oh, especially, there's so much adjustment going on. Everyone's trying to figure out their new roles.
So that's where let them becomes crucial.
It really does.
You might need to let them grieve the change in family structure, or even see you as a threat initially. Give everyone space to adjust and process.
Exactly.
But I imagine it's hard to let them when their opinions feel so hurtful,
It is.
especially when it comes to our partners or our life choices.
It can be tough.
What do you do then?
Well, Mel introduces this concept that she calls frame of reference.
Okay.
And it's the idea that we all have this unique lens based on our experiences. So what seems irrational to you might make perfect sense from their perspective.
I like that. Can you give us an example of that?
Sure. Mel shares how her own mother initially disliked Chris, her husband.
Oh, interesting.
Mel saw it as a lack of support.
Yeah.
But when she steps into her mom's frame of reference...
She realizes her mom was just terrified of losing her daughter to the East Coast.
Exactly.
Because Chris lived on the East Coast.
He did.
That makes so much sense. It wasn't about judging Chris as a person.
Right.
It was about this fear of being separated from her daughter.
Exactly.
So it's not about saying either side is right or wrong, but understanding those different perspectives can help de-escalate conflict and build empathy.
It creates space for deeper connection.
Yeah.
Even when you disagree.
Which is what we all want in our relationships, right?
Absolutely.
Connection.
Yes.
And I think, speaking of judgment, social media is where that fear can feel so amplified. Oh, absolutely.
This pressure to present the perfect image.
Yes.
The terror of sharing anything personal.
Totally.
Because you just never know how people are going to react.
You don't.
Mel actually has a really relatable story about that in the book.
She does.
She knew she needed to use social media to build her speaking business. But the fear paralyzed her.
Oh, wow.
For 2 years.
2 years.
2 years.
That's a long time.
I'm guessing it was that fear of judgment,
Yeah.
especially from friends and family.
Right.
What were they going to think?
Right.
I bet a lot of us can relate to that constant second guessing. Will they think I'm bragging, trying too hard? Am I being inauthentic?
All those thoughts.
It can be crippling.
It can.
And that's where I think let them comes in.
Yeah.
You literally can't control what people think.
You can't.
So why waste energy worrying about it?
Great. Mel eventually overcame her fear, started posting, and her business took off. It's a reminder that sometimes the anticipation of judgment is far scarier than the actual judgment itself.
I think that's true for a lot of things.
And letting go of that need to control other people's perceptions can be so freeing. It allows you to be more authentic, more yourself.
It does.
And speaking of things we can't control, there's that universal experience of comparison.
Yes.
Especially in the age of social media.
It's everywhere.
It's so easy to look at other people's seemingly perfect lives and feel like we're falling short.
Yeah, the highlight reel.
Comparison is the thief of joy.
It really is.
Now, Mel addresses this in the book, right?
She does.
Tell me about it.
She makes this helpful distinction between two types of comparison. Those based on fixed traits, like looks or natural talent.
Okay.
And those based on achievable things, like careers or skills.
So if you're comparing yourself based on something you can't change,
yes,
let them, is about acceptance.
It is.
Focusing on your own strengths.
Exactly.
It's recognizing that everyone has unique gifts. And comparing yourself to someone else in those areas is just a waste of energy.
Right.
Okay, but what about those things you can achieve? Say someone in your field is getting all the recognition you crave. How do you let them have that success without feeling resentful?
Well, Mel's take on that is fascinating. She says that jealousy, in these cases, is actually a sign that you want that thing too.
Oh, interesting.
It's showing you what's possible. She tells this great story about visiting a friend who has this dream home.
Okay.
And initially, she was just consumed with envy.
Yeah. It sparked a realization. It wasn't about her friend having something she didn't. It was about her own desire to create a similar life.
Exactly.
It's not about taking away from their success. It's about using it as inspiration for your own journey.
I love that.
So it's not that comparison is always bad.
Right.
It's how we use it.
Yes.
It can either be a source of negativity and self-doubt, or it can be a guidepost.
A motivator.
Showing us what we truly value. So it seems like a lot of what we've talked about boils down to this idea of letting go of control.
Yeah.
Whether it's external events, other people's opinions, or even our own negative thought patterns.
That's a great summary.
And that's a great point, I think, to transition into the next part of our deep dive, where we'll explore how let them applies to some specific challenges.
That's good.
Starting with those tricky dynamics we often face in our friendships.
Oh, yeah, friendships.
Friendships, they can be tricky, can't they?
Oh, they can.
Especially as we get older. It's not always easy to maintain those close connections.
It's not.
People move, life gets busy, and sometimes those friendships just kind of fade.
You do.
And it can be painful, especially when you feel like you're the one putting in all the effort. You start to wonder if you're the only one who cares about the friendship.
Right.
Like, what am I doing wrong?
Exactly.
Mel actually talks about a similar experience in the book.
She does.
She had this close-knit group of friends when her kids were younger. They did everything together. And then the dynamic shifted.
It did.
What happened?
Well, some of the families started spending more time together. And Mel and her husband kind of felt left out.
Oh, I've been there.
Yeah.
It's that feeling of rejection.
It is.
Even if it's unintentional.
Even if it is.
It still hurts.
It does.
So how does let them apply in those situations? Because it can't be easy to just let them be friends with other people when it feels so personal.
It's not. But Mel breaks it down into these 3 pillars of friendship.
Okay, I love a good framework.
Proximity, timing, and energy.
Okay.
And as adults, all 3 are constantly in flux.
They are. That's so true. So break down those pillars for me. What does she mean by proximity?
Well, it's pretty straightforward.
Mm-hmm.
We tend to be closer to the people we see often. As adults, this becomes a lot trickier. People move, jobs change, our schedules get packed.
Right. You're not bumping into each other at the school pickup or the park anymore.
Exactly.
And that lack of regular interaction can really impact a friendship.
It can.
What about timing?
Well, life stages matter. What you had in common at 25 might be completely different at 35 or 45.
Oh, for sure.
Your priorities shift, your interests evolve.
He might be in totally different phases of life. One friend's having babies while the other one's focused on building a career.
Exactly.
And that can create distance.
It can.
And lastly, there's energy.
Yeah. People change. And sometimes that compatibility just isn't there anymore.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean either person is bad or wrong. It's just that your paths are diverging.
Yeah. I love how this framework takes something that can feel so personal and hurtful, like a fading friendship, and provides a more logical lens.
Yes.
It's not necessarily that they don't like me anymore. It's just that these external factors have shifted.
Exactly.
And that can be comforting when you're feeling rejected or abandoned by a friend.
It can be.
It's not always intentional.
It's not.
It's just life happening.
It is.
It makes me think about that, saying people come into your life for a reason, a season, or a lifetime.
I love that saying.
And sometimes we need to let them go for our own well-being.
We do.
But what happens when you do let them go and you realize, wait a minute, I don't have many close friends left?
Yeah.
That can feel incredibly isolating.
It can.
And lonely.
It can.
Mel talks about this too, right?
She does.
What does she say?
She moved to a new town in her 50s and experienced crippling loneliness.
Oh, wow.
And she knew no one. And she fell into this trap of waiting for friendships to magically appear.
Which never really happens, does it?
Not really.
Especially as an adult.
Especially as an adult.
You gotta put yourself out there.
You do.
So what does she do?
Well, she realized she had to change her approach.
Okay.
She started introducing herself to people, joining groups, forcing herself to be social, even when it felt awkward and uncomfortable.
That takes courage.
It does.
So it's about taking that let me energy and proactively creating connections.
Exactly.
Did it work?
It did.
Tell me more.
She built this incredible community in her new town. It all started with her willingness to go first.
That's so encouraging. It's a reminder that you can create meaningful connections no matter your age or your circumstances.
You can.
It's like building any other skill. It takes effort.
Yes.
Intentionality.
Yes.
And sometimes a bit of courage to be vulnerable and put yourself out there.
It does.
Now let's shift gears a bit
Okay.
and talk about those relationships where you really want someone to change. A spouse with unhealthy habits, a coworker who's always slacking off, a parent who can't let go of control.
Yeah.
We've all encountered those situations where no amount of nagging or pleading seems to work.
It's so frustrating.
It is. And it's easy to get stuck in that cycle of trying to control the other person.
Right.
They resist.
You do.
And the whole thing just escalates.
It does.
It becomes a battle of wills.
It's a classic power struggle.
And this is where let them can be such a game changer.
It can.
Because Mel really dives deep into the psychology of change.
She does.
Highlighting why it's so difficult.
It is difficult.
And why people often resist it, even when it's for their own good.
Yeah.
So help me understand this. Why is change so hard?
Well, Mel points out 3 key truths.
Okay.
First, change is inherently difficult.
Yeah.
It requires overriding ingrained patterns and habits, stepping outside your comfort zone.
Right. Which most of us aren't wired for.
Or not.
We crave that comfort and familiarity.
We do.
Okay, so what's the second truth?
Second, people think they're the exception.
Oh, interesting.
They hear the advice, but they think, that doesn't apply to me.
Right. It's that rules are for thee, not for me mentality.
Exactly.
And what's the third truth?
Perhaps most importantly, pressure makes people feel controlled,
Oh.
which makes them resist even more.
That makes so much sense. The more we nag or push, the more they dig in their heels.
They do.
It becomes this battle of wills.
It does.
So that's why let them is so crucial in these situations.
It is.
It's about accepting that you can't force someone to change.
Right.
And instead focusing on what you can do.
It's exactly.
That sounds good in theory, but how do you actually do that when you're genuinely worried about someone's behavior? When their choices are hurting them or the relationship?
Well, Mel offers this helpful framework called the ABC loop.
Ooh, I love a good acronym.
It's a 3-step process for influencing change without being controlling or manipulative.
Okay, walk me through these ABCs.
All right, it starts with A, apologize.
Wait, apologize to the person you want to change.
Yes.
Why?
Apologize for any past pressure or nagging. Acknowledge that you can't make them change. And then, and this is key, ask open-ended questions to get them to articulate why the change matters to them.
So instead of dictating what they should do,
Right.
you're guiding them to think about it for themselves.
Exactly.
That's brilliant.
Mel even suggests using this technique called the 5 whys to get to the root of their resistance.
What's that?
So you ask, why does this bother you? And then whatever their answer is, you ask, why does that bother you?
Okay.
Keep asking why
Yeah.
till you uncover the real issue that's driving their behavior.
Oh, I love that. It's like peeling back the layers of an onion.
It is.
Okay, so we've apologized. We've asked some probing questions. Now what?
Now we move to beady back off.
So after you've had that conversation,
Yes.
you give them space.
You do.
Let them process without feeling pressured.
Right?
That sounds so hard, especially when you're anxious about the outcome.
It can be.
It takes a lot of trust.
It does.
But it's crucial to resist that urge to control.
It is.
And while you're backing off, there's another element to
There's
model the behavior you want to see.
Yes.
Oh, that's clever. Leading by example rather than lecturing.
Exactly.
So if you want your partner to be more active, start going for walks, join a gym.
Yeah.
You're showing them the benefits without nagging.
You are.
Because people are naturally influenced by those around them.
They are.
It's almost like you're subtly hacking their brains for good.
You are.
I like it. Okay, so we've apologized. We've backed off. What's C?
C is celebrate.
This one sounds more fun.
It is.
So tell me about it.
Celebrate any progress, no matter how small. Reinforce the positive connections to the change they're making.
So if your partner goes for a walk, even if it's just around the block,
Yes.
you acknowledge it. You encourage it.
You do.
You make them feel good about taking that step. So
Exactly.
you're reinforcing the positive feelings associated with the change,
You are.
making them more likely to stick with it.
Exactly.
This ABC loop is such a powerful tool
It is.
for influencing change in a way that feels supportive and not controlling.
It is.
It feels so much healthier than that nagging and pleading cycle that so many of us get trapped in.
Yeah.
It's about respecting their autonomy while still guiding them towards positive change.
Exactly.
But I think it's important to acknowledge that there are situations where even the ABC loop might not be enough.
Right.
What about those really difficult situations where someone's struggling with addiction, mental health issues, something where letting them feels almost wrong?
Those are tough situations.
Yeah, they are. You want to support them, but you don't want to enable destructive behavior.
Right.
It's such a delicate balance.
It is.
Mel explores this in the book.
She does.
What does she say?
Well, she shares insights from Dr. Robert Waldinger.
Oh, okay.
He's a psychiatrist who leads the Harvard study of adult development,
Oh, wow.
one of the longest-running studies on happiness ever conducted.
That's amazing. What does he have to say about this?
Well, he's found that sometimes natural consequences are the only motivator for change.
So as painful as it is to watch someone we love hit rock bottom,
Yeah,
sometimes it's the only way they'll wake up and realize they need help.
it is.
That's got to be one of the hardest parts of let them.
It is.
Knowing when to step back and let those consequences unfold, even when it feels so counterintuitive.
It does.
And it's important to remember, this isn't about abandoning the person.
No.
It's about setting healthy boundaries.
Yes.
Offering support that's contingent on their effort.
Right.
Letting them know you're there for them when they're ready.
Yeah.
It's like saying, I love you, I support you, but I'm not going to rescue you from the consequences of your choices.
I like that.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground with let them. From dealing with those daily annoyances to navigating complex family dynamics, even influencing change in others. But there's one area I'm particularly curious about, and I bet a lot of our listeners are too.
Okay, what's that?
Dating.
Data.
It's a whole other beast, isn't it?
It is.
Especially in this age of apps and ghosting. It feels like the rules of engagement have completely changed.
I agree.
Mel doesn't sugarcoat it in the book either.
No, she doesn't.
She validates how discouraging and disheartening modern dating can be.
She does.
So we're not getting some vague, just love yourself and everything will be fine advice.
Not at all.
Okay, good. So what does she say?
Well, let them, when applied to dating, is about deciding who's worthy of your time and energy.
Okay.
It's about not contorting yourself to fit someone else's lack of effort.
It's about choosing, not chasing. Because I think so many of us have been guilty of chasing after people who weren't truly interested,
We have.
trying to convince them to like us,
Right.
which usually just ends in feeling confused and insecure.
It does.
Ugh, yes. So how do we break free from that pattern? How do we start choosing instead of chasing?
Well, Mel has this great line in the book.
Okay, ready for it.
She says, if they like you, you'll know. If they don't, you'll be confused.
Oh, that's so true. And yet it's so easy to forget when you're in the thick of it.
It is.
Making excuses, hoping for the best.
We've all been there.
So how do we remember?
Well, let them, in this context, is about paying attention to their actions,
Okay.
not just their words.
So let them not text back. Let them make empty promises.
Let them ghost.
Let them ghost.
Let them.
And let their behavior be the message.
Exactly.
It's about recognizing your worth
It is.
And not settling for crumbs of attention. It's about saying, let me see them for who they are. Let me accept the truth. And let me move on to someone who is actually excited to be with me.
That's a great way to put it.
That's such a powerful shift in perspective.
It is.
But I imagine that even when you are choosing wisely,
Yes,
relationships can still be challenging.
they can be.
What about those times when you love someone,
Yeah.
but you also kind of want them to change?
Yeah.
Is that always a red flag?
Well, Mel addresses this too. She talks about how we often go into relationships wanting our partners to become more like us over time.
Right. But that's not really partnership. It's control, isn't it?
It is.
And it's a recipe for resentment and unhappiness.
It can be.
Mel suggests asking yourself this really important question.
Okay.
Is this a core need that's not being met? Or am I just trying to mold them into someone they're not?
That's a good question.
So if it's something fundamental to your happiness and they're showing no willingness to change,
Yes.
let them be who they are.
Yeah.
And let me decide if that's acceptable for me.
It's about recognizing your own non-negotiables and not settling for a relationship that doesn't fulfill your needs,
Yeah.
even if you love the person.
Even if you do. And to add some weight to that,
Yes.
Mel cites research from John Gottman,
Oh, yes.
who's a renowned relationship expert.
Yeah.
Gottman found that 69% of relationship problems are,
Unresolvable.
wait, unresolvable?
Yes.
Really?
Yes. 69%.
69%.
Wow.
And she doesn't share that to be pessimistic,
Right.
but to encourage people to choose their partners wisely.
Okay.
Because if you're going into a relationship knowing that some things will never change,
Uh-huh.
you can decide from the start if those differences are deal breakers
Okay.
or something you can accept and work with.
Yeah.
It all comes back to taking ownership of your own happiness and choosing a partner who aligns with your core values and needs.
This has been so insightful. But I have to ask about the flip side of choosing wisely.
Okay.
What about heartbreak?
Heartbreak.
Because even when we do our best,
Yeah,
relationships don't always work out.
they don't.
And when they end, it can feel like your world is falling apart.
It can.
Heartbreak is definitely one of the most painful experiences we can go through.
It is.
And Mel acknowledges that.
She does.
What does she say?
She says the worst advice you can give someone going through a breakup is
Just love yourself.
bingo.
Because when you're heartbroken,
Yeah.
you often hate yourself.
They do.
You're replaying all the mistakes,
Right.
blaming yourself, feeling utterly lost and alone.
Absolutely.
So it's hard to imagine letting go when you're in so much pain.
It is.
So what does let them look like in those situations?
Well, Mel emphasizes that it's okay to feel those feelings.
Okay.
Let yourself grieve, cry, process the loss.
Mm-hmm.
She suggests a 30-day no contact rule
Oh, no contact.
to help your nervous system reset and prevent backsliding.
So no texting, no calling, no social media stalking.
No.
Cold turkey.
Cold turkey.
That's easier said than done.
It is.
Especially when you're used to having that person in your life. It can be tough.
But it's crucial for moving on.
It is.
And Mel offers some concrete steps to navigate that heartbreak. What are they?
Write about the good and the bad.
Okay.
Distract yourself with activities you enjoy.
Okay.
Pick a challenge to focus on.
Okay. So it's about channeling that let me energy into rebuilding your life, even when it feels impossible.
Even when it does.
It's about taking those small steps,
Yes.
day by
Day by day.
to heal and rediscover yourself.
Exactly.
And remember, heartbreak, while incredibly painful,
Yeah.
is also an opportunity for growth.
It is.
It forces us to confront our own patterns,
It does.
our needs,
Yes.
and ultimately what we truly want in a partner.
Exactly.
It's like that saying, sometimes good things fall apart so better things can fall together.
I love that saying.
And it's a perfect segue, I think, into the final and perhaps most important piece of Mel's Let Them philosophy. It's not just about letting go of other people. It's about letting go of what's holding you back from living a more fulfilling life.
That's deep.
It's about stepping into your power,
Yes.
creating the relationships you deserve.
I like that.
It's interesting how let them can be applied to so many different aspects of life, from those little daily frustrations to those big, life-altering relationships and transitions.
It really is a versatile framework.
It is.
And it all circles back to the relationship we have with ourselves. Mel poses these really powerful questions in the book.
Okay, hit me with them.
She asks, are you respecting your own boundaries? Are you pursuing your goals? Are you giving yourself the kindness and compassion you deserve?
Ooh, those are good ones. Because it's like that saying, you can't pour from an empty cup.
Exactly.
If we're not taking care of ourselves. How can we show up for others in a healthy way?
Right.
And that's what I think the let them theory is all about. It's
Yeah.
about recognizing your own worth and not giving your power away to people or situations that drain you.
It's about choosing yourself, even when it's hard.
It is. Setting those boundaries. Prioritizing your needs. Knowing when to walk away from anything that diminishes your sense of self.
And Mel drives this home with what I think is the most impactful thought in the entire book.
Okay, I'm ready.
She says, imagine all the energy you've wasted trying to control others, their opinions, their actions, their choices. If you took all that energy and redirected it toward what you truly want, where would you be? Who would you be?
Wow. That's a powerful question. It really makes you stop and think about all the ways we hold ourselves back. Because we're so focused on what other people think or do.
It's so easy to get caught up in those external expectations.
It is.
But let them is a reminder that true freedom and empowerment come from within.
So to wrap up this deep dive into the let them theory, what's the key message we want our listeners to walk away with?
I think it comes down to this. Let them is not about being passive or giving up. It's about making a conscious choice to focus on what you can control yourself and letting go of the rest.
It's about strategic detachment. It's about recognizing that you can't force people to change, but you can choose how you respond. It's about setting boundaries, taking ownership of your happiness, and ultimately becoming more empowered in all areas of your life.
It's about reclaiming your energy, your time, your mental space, and using those resources to create a life that feels more aligned, more authentic, and more fulfilling.
I love that. And it's a good reminder that let them isn't a one-time fix. It's a continuous practice. It's about showing up for yourself every day, making choices that align with your values and your vision for your life.
So as we finish up this deep dive, I want to leave you with one final question to ponder. What one area of your life would most benefit from applying let them right now?
Is it a stressful work situation, a frustrating family dynamic, maybe even a dating pattern that's leaving you feeling drained and confused?
Choose that one area and commit to trying out some of the techniques we've discussed. What happens when you start letting go of that need to control and instead focus on empowering yourself?
And if you're craving more guidance and practical examples, definitely check out Mel Robbins' book, The Let Them Theory. It's packed with even more research, anecdotes, and actionable advice.
We highly recommend it.
But we hope this deep dive has given you the core principles to start using Let Them in your own life, right now, today. Because ultimately, it's about creating a life that truly reflects who you are and what you want to achieve.
Couldn't have said it better myself.